Hello. I nearly looked in the wrong place there. That's a really bad start. Hello and good evening, everybody. I hope you're all doing really well. This webinar is our final webinar in our series that was promoted over the course of the last month and a half. It was funded by the National Lottery, so thank you very much to them. And it's enabled us to provide 25 different webinars to single parents. And I am neither single nor a parent, so this is going to be a fun one for me this evening. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview as to the different subjects that we've covered over the last month and a half, so that if there's anything that you've missed out on, you will be able to go back and watch the recordings of these. These are all on our YouTube channel. So if you didn't see them, we've had making decisions, managing feelings of guilt, lone parents, single parents. We did an autism quiz, handling confrontations and conflicts. We've had a couple of Q&A sessions. Those live Q&As were really good. Avoiding stress, overcoming self-doubt, money management. We've had setting ground rules, changing your emotions fast. We had an anger quiz, dealing with criticism, how to cope with illness, dealing with back to school anxiety, sleep quiz, reducing technology addiction, managing self-expectations, self-harm quiz, developing a good routine. I earlier this evening did dealing with angry children, and I also, confession time, forgot to hit record and have just spent the last hour redoing it. And now we are doing coping with playing two roles. And I see that Julie is here with us, which is fabulous because Julie was both a parent and a single one. It might be a slightly better resource than I am when it comes to this topic.
Sorry. I did message you.
No, I got your messages. Don't you worry about that. Julie, do you want to contribute? Do you want to be a passenger? How do you want to go with this?
I'm happy to contribute, Gemma, with you. I have been a lone parent.
Yeah, so you know the drill.
I do have experience.
All righty. Am I able to get you to put your camera on by any chance?
That's what I was wondering.
I haven't got any camera functions coming up for you. Are you able to switch from the web app to the desktop one? And then that should give you your camera functionality. Do you know how to do that?
Done.
Lovely. All right, I'll just wait for the settings to change here. So at the moment, I have still got you as being in via the web. Have you got anything? If you got, all right. Bear with us, caller.
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, I think Julie might need to log out and log back in order to get here. Oh yeah, I did have some messages, but I didn't actually read them. Okay, I can see Julie is re-arriving. Let us go to allow sharing webcam, and we will also send an unmute request. All right, so you should be unmuted there now, Julie. You should also be able to switch your webcam on. I'll send you a webcam request. Perfect, you did it. Wow,
that's a miracle.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here.
So am I.
I did make some plans. I will say that much. I did make a few plans about bits and bobs that I could talk about here, because one thing I will say is, whilst I'm neither a parent nor a single one, I was raised by a single parent, so I've got some perspective of it from that particular angle. And one of the things that I was thinking about in relation to this topic is, I guess, like the impact that had on me being raised mainly by my mum. My dad was in my life, but I feel that was perhaps a bit begrudgingly in my life. And so I didn't really have a lot of male influence when I was growing up. And one of the things I literally just thought of before I started recording this webinar is I remember my mum, and this may be a bit of a generation thing as well, very much was of the attitude and mindset that for some things she would just be like, I just need a man. And it used to annoy me. It really bothered me. And in a way it caused me to become sort of quite anti that sort of attitude. Like I don't do well at the damsel in distress and asking for help thing, because my mum was, you know, she was so like, she was so much a mum and not ever trying to do the male counterpart in life, although I think she eventually did quite well. But I remember sort of quite early on that she really had this kind of like, oh, I can't do this, I need a man. and me just being like, oh God.
Yeah.
But also sort of weirdly balanced with an attitude of all men are pigs and that kind of thing. So one of the things that I was thinking about in relation to this webinar as well was about how to not be negative about the ex or their sex, which I would quite challenging. So tell people what your experience has been, how it is that you came to end up fulfilling two roles.
Okay, I have experience in different roles of that, because my first husband died. So absolutely there was no backup anywhere, and that was with my two eldest children. I then remarried and had my youngest, so there's 11 years between the eldest and the youngest. But her dad was still around. And with the eldest two, obviously there was none of that, your dad was a pig, because he died. So with the youngest one, I always used to say to her, he wasn't a very good husband, but he's a good dad. And I always made a point of saying that, probably because to me it was important to her, because the other two didn't have a dad. So that role was important. But I always made a point of saying what happened between me and him was different to what happened with him and her.
So, was he a good dad? Like, were you able to say that genuinely?
Yeah, he was a good dad. I mean, he was always there, because my eldest two had health problems. He was a very good dad to the youngest. So, you know, she saw him a lot. She had a lot of time with him. So, yeah, he was a good dad.
I can imagine that makes life a lot easier to be able to authentically say, he is a good dad. Maybe wasn't a very good husband, but he is a good dad. And I have a friend who has a similar circumstance, except it's that he doesn't have a good dad. Like, his dad is not good at being a dad. But everyone that knows him, even his so it would be his parents, so his grandparents, but on the divorced side of the family, even they say he's a lovely man, he's a great man, we still really like him, but he's a shockingly bad dad. And I can imagine that for parents who are in a situation where not only are they kind of coping with being the carer, but also that the other parent is either not around or they're around but actually causes more problems than good that they're around, then it makes representing that other party in a positive light really challenging.
But I mean, he was a good dad. He ain't such a good dad now. But I just say to her, he doesn't know how to. He just doesn't know how to deal with this. You know, the situation he's in now. He's remarried. His new wife has never had kids, and doesn't particularly want him to have any. So so I just say he's in a very difficult position. He's not had any experience in this way. He just doesn't get it. So and I've said to her, don't give up on him, but just try to understand.
That must be quite a difficult, I guess, a difficult balance to strike between. And I've had this conversation with, with other parents that I've worked with therapeutically, where it's kind of, do I tell my child the truth and say, listen, mum's just not going to show up this weekend, and I haven't been able to get hold of her, and I'm sorry she's letting you down again? Or do I kind of protect their innocence in a way and say, oh, she must have got really busy or something's happened, and sort of paint her in a more positive light, even though deep down I know the truth is that she's just been a bit useless, or
I think you have to meet that halfway. You have to prepare them for being let down, because there's a good chance it's going to happen. So you have to sort of, mum may not make it this weekend, but it's not because she doesn't love you, it's because, and think up a good reason, and bite your tongue on going into one about why they're useless, sorry.
Definitely. One of the experiences I remember, so when my parents were separating, which they did more than once, a couple of times, and once for quite a long period of time, sort of a year or so, I was in a refuge, and it was a women's refuge, and that was quite an intimidating place to be, because what you would hear there were a lot of bad representations of the opposite sex, of men, and that's obviously quite a unique situation. I think that it's also something that can happen outside of that kind of environment, where we've maybe got a single mum or a single dad where they've been quite badly hurt, maybe more than once, by the opposite sex, and so then there becomes this sort of theme that starts to emerge, where they are really feeling quite negative towards men, feeling quite negative towards women. How important is it that that doesn't translate to the children?
I think it's quite important, because although children at a very young age will form their own opinions of someone who's letting them down, it doesn't take them long, and they sort of get used to saying, well, they just let me down, they just I don't think you need to enforce it. I think you need to let them work it out. I know it's hard, because even at school they will have other children whose parents are the same, and they'll get opinions from them. But I think you need to sort of balance it and say, okay, this has happened to me, it doesn't mean it's going to happen to you. So as they grow up, you can sort of reassure them, okay, it's happened to me, but you have learned from my mistakes, because they will. My dad said something the other day about when we were younger, and he said, but we never discussed that in front of you. And I said, yeah, Dad. He said, but you were kids. And I said, yeah, but we weren't deaf kids. We hear things, we saw things, we work things out for ourselves. It's we weren't stupid kids.
Exactly.
And kids,
sometimes it's the utterances or the things that are sort of said, because I remember as a kid, the stuff that I would hear my mum say on the phone could pass me by, but the stuff that I heard her say when she kind of turned around, that was the interesting bit.
Or even the face when they talk about that person. And
exactly. Those are the bits you notice. And those are the ones that you go, oh, well, that's the significant piece of information. That's the bit that's going to stick with me. Or just in terms of, you know, their sort of general attitudes towards each other. I remember, like, both my parents did this after they were separated. My mum would say, your bloody father, blah, 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 blah. And my dad would say, your stupid mother, blah, 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 blah. And I would always sort of feel like, because they had abandoned each other, and I was like the linchpin holding them both together in some unwanted way, it was like I was responsible for the fact that she was a stupid mother and he was a bloody father. And you know, it was like, now like I'm responsible
both
for
piling it onto you.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I think that it, you know, also came from a place, certainly from my mum, of being quite resentful of the fact that she was sort of landed in this mess on her own now. And I think that there was a lot of just practical stuff that became very difficult because of that. What sort of stuff do you remember on a practical level where you were kind of like, oh, like now I'm doing all of this?
Okay, money was a big one with the girls. And I used to sit them down and say, okay, and they loved the Railway Children, the film, where the kids' dad went to prison and they came poor. And I say, okay, kids, we're poor this week, like the Railway Children. So this is how much money we've got. We've got to go shopping. So this is what we need. And when we've bought what we need, if there's any money left over at the end, we'll buy something we want. And I always made a point of saying, this is what we need, but then we can have what we want. And then they could have a choice of what it was we wanted. So that's what I did. And I always made a point, because I found time was the thing. I've got 3 girls and I'm on my own, and I'm trying to work and everything. So I made a routine with them where every evening they had 1 hour of time before bed where if they wanted my undivided attention, they had it, and the other 2 had to amuse themselves for an hour, and then that one went to bed and the next one had an hour. And they did that, and that one went to bed and the next one had her hour. They didn't have to use it, but if they needed it, it was there. And then from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock was my hour, because I needed time to just at the end of the day as well.
Absolutely.
And I think that worked well for them, because they knew that they had my undivided attention for at least an hour every evening if they wanted it.
What made that work? Because I can imagine, it sounds like a great plan, and I can imagine some people thinking, but I won't be able to get my kids to do that. Like, what's the key to getting them into the groove of just expecting that's the way it is every evening?
Repetition. You just keep repeating it, and if one of them comes to you in their time and somebody needs to butt in, you say to them, unless the house is burning down or you are dying or missing a limb, this is their time. You will get your time in a minute. And you just have to be strong and keep enforcing it, and then they get it. They work it out and they get it. They do, but you just have to stick to it. There's going to be times when they go but, and you have to go, no, this is her time, this is their time. So I mean, it's not easy to get started, but it works. It did work for us.
And how old were your children when you were first on your own with them? What ages were they at that point in time?
When my first husband died, my 2 eldest girls were 8 and 4.
Wow, okay.
So so they were quite young. When my second husband and I split up, my youngest daughter was a year old.
Oh, wow.
So she sort of grew up with it. So yeah,
No.
so it was, but then the oldest one was 11 by then, so she had to fit in. So
Yeah. And did you, if you don't mind me asking, were you working? Were you full-time mumming? How were you sort of juggling those
I was
things?
trying to do both.
Wow. Okay.
I did work. I had a lot of jobs because of the health problems my eldest one had.
Yeah.
I lost a lot of jobs because I got called out a lot of the time to say one of your kids has gone to hospital, you know, and so yeah, but I did find in the end a job that I fit in around. I mean, I left home at 6:30 in the morning to deliver the eldest one to college, the next one to secondary school, and then take the little one to infant school, and then start work at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, and then finished at 2:30, 3 o'clock in time to go and pick the youngest and do it all in reverse. So yeah, I mean, they got up early. They had to get up early and do it. But,
when you were going through that period of time, was it a case of thinking, oh God, like I wonder sometimes if parents are kind of thinking, can't wait for them to grow up so that I'm not going through this crazy routine all the time, but then simultaneously feeling a bit guilty about the fact that you're wishing their childhood away just so that you can kind of get a bit of your freedom back, really.
Yeah, it does. You do feel guilty a lot of the time. I mean, there are times when, as they grew up, they would come to me with, my friends are going to do this for the weekend, or they're going on holiday. Why don't we go on holiday? And I would be honest with them, and I would sit them down and say, okay, your friends are going on holiday. The difference between your friends and you is your friends have two parents and they both go to work. And you only have one. And I can't help that. And I wish it was different. But I just can't help that. And I think if you talk to them, and you know, but we will do something nice. And we used to find, I mean, we lived in the New Forest, so we could go out for free and have a really good time, you know. So
the communication and the compromises were important.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we did go on holidays. We went camping, you know. My friends are going to Spain for a fortnight. Well, we're going camping.
And remember those days.
They enjoyed it. They really enjoyed themselves. So.
Your children are much older now. So what age are they now?
Now they are 34, 31 and 24.
Okay. So bearing in mind that they've been through an experience of growing up with a single parent fulfilling two roles, how do you think they reflect on that now? Do they still sort of look back and go, oh, but we really missed out on going on a holiday to Spain, it's still not fair? Has it affected their relationships in any way? What's been your experience of that?
The oldest one is happily married. She has 3 children of her own, with big age gaps the same. She's got a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old and a 2-year-old. She is happily married. They go camping because they like it. No, she sent me a Mother's Day card which read, I am sitting here with a glass of wine wondering how you're not a raging alcoholic. And I just texted her back, so am I. Yeah, no, she totally appreciates it now. I mean, she's grown up and now she appreciates just how hard it was for me, because even being married, sometimes they struggle. So yeah, she appreciates it a lot more. The other 2 appreciate it as well. I mean, the youngest one lives in the woods in a cabin, so she obviously enjoyed being outdoors. She has chickens. So
awesome.
I must have done something right. They're all very, very nice. They've got great work ethic. They're great people. They've got lots of friends. They all have relationships that they're happy in. So it hasn't hasn't affected them at all that way, as far as I know.
Yeah. What would you
So,
say? I know money being a factor, and time. Are there any other sort of big things that were like, this is definitely a challenge kind of stuff?
my eldest two, like I said, had big health problems. They've got defibrillators implanted in their hearts. I had to spend a lot of time in hospitals with them, and I do feel, although she had her dad in the background, that the youngest one missed out on a lot because
Okay.
of that. She
Yeah.
never made an issue of it, but I always feel like that must have impacted on her somehow,
Yeah.
because she missed out on a lot of things because I was at the hospital with the other two, and she was
Yeah.
sort of palmed off to dad or nan or whoever could
Yeah.
have her in an emergency, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do
So,
feel like I maybe didn't give her the attention that she should have
yeah.
had.
So is
But
it that if you are coping with juggling both roles, actually a wider support network is going to be really, really
yeah,
important? Yeah.
yes, yeah. Be it family or friend. I mean, my mum was a godsend
Yeah.
because I went to university and everything, and my mum's her. So she, and
Yeah.
I also had a network of friends where we took it in turns to
Okay.
support each other and have their kids for a minute. And so, yeah, and it works. If you can find a network of local friends, we
Yeah.
had a babysitting circle and things like that, and it
Great.
works. If you can do it, it's a good
Yeah.
thing to do. So,
You mentioned there about you going to university, and it made me think about like my mum and some of the ambitions that she had, and some of them didn't get fulfilled. I remember her wanting to learn to drive, and she did that, and I was probably, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14 by that point. So it was reasonable for her to sort of leave me and go off and take her driving lessons and those sorts of things. But there were other things that I was always conscious of her not being able to do, kind of because I was there and there wasn't necessarily anyone else to sort of take the reins on
mm.
looking after me. Do you feel that it's still possible for you to do the things that you want to do when you want to do them if you're a parent delivering both parenting roles?
Not entirely. I think some things have to wait, you
Yeah.
know, and go. I mean, I was a mature student. I was in my 30s, late 30s when I went to university,
Mm.
and that was just something that I thought would help. Actually, I thought it'd give me a chance to earn more money and things, and would help the girls. So yeah, I think as a parent, you've got to balance. If I want this badly enough,
Mm.
it will still be there, and the
Yeah.
chance will still be there. And you're never too old to go to university. So
Yeah. How much of it do you think is about a kind of acceptance of the circumstances? And I'll give an example of what I mean, although it's not really akin to what we're talking about here. But I used to nanny, and I used to work 12-hour shifts as a nanny, and I was simultaneously setting up my business. And what I would find is that sometimes, say for example, my business phone would ring whilst I was with the children, and it clearly wasn't the right time for me to be answering the business phone because I needed to be with the children, but almost feeling a little bit like a bit resentful of the fact that they kind of needed my time and attention at that point. And just a sort of general sense of frustration that, like, God, I'm stuck here with you, and I want to be doing something else, like there's other stuff that I want to be putting my time and attention into. And when I, in a way, is sort of said to myself, you just can't do that today. Like, you just need to, like, put the calls on divert, put the phone on silent or whatever. I would actually have a really, really lovely time with them, and I would really engage with them. And I found that toward like the end of my time with them, I knew that I was going to be leaving to do my business, and I didn't want to leave that job with a sort of memory of having felt resentful towards it. I wanted to leave the job, you know, just having felt real love for these children. And so I made quite a conscious effort to say, right now, whilst I'm spending this remaining time with them, I am fully with them. Like, I'm here for as much as they need me. And then I like really loved it, and I really enjoyed it, and I was really sad when I left. And I sort of wonder if part of the solution around this idea of, you know, maybe feeling quite guilty about not being able to do certain things, or feeling quite resentful about not being able to get the freedoms to do the things that a parent might want to do, is actually just like accepting where you're at and letting some things go.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to. I mean, one of my biggest problems was people would say to me, well, get a babysitter and we'll go out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got 2 kids with sudden death syndrome. You want to get me a babysitter? It's not going to happen. I didn't go out for about 8 years in the evening. Even my mum
Wow.
was scared to babysit them, you know. So, yeah, there were times when I sat there and thought, my friends are going out and I can't go out. But once you, like you said, once you say, well, it's not their fault, you
No,
just got
we
to,
are where
yeah. Once you accept that and you understand, you can do it later. You know, your
yeah,
kids aren't going to be kids forever. You
no,
need to enjoy them.
yeah, you've
You
got to be there
really,
for that time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't ask to be born. You chose to have them. So, you know, just remind yourself of that. I chose them. They didn't choose me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think once you do that, like you said, once you accept it, you actually enjoy being with them.
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
actually enjoy the time you have with them. You
And
do
I
have,
think, sorry, go on, what are you going to say?
you can have fun. I mean, don't get me
100%.
wrong, they can be horrible, and you can, and I always used to say to them, I will always love you. Sometimes I don't like you very much, and sometimes I don't like what you do very much, but I'll always love you. Well,
Yeah.
and sometimes I didn't like them.
I can fully appreciate that. I think as well that it's maybe just kind of getting past that initial overwhelm, particularly for parents who have
Yeah,
found themselves, you know, newly in this role independently, and that was not part of the plan, is realizing how actually you've probably fulfilled a gazillion other roles as a parent already quite successfully. You know, as a parent, you are sometimes a comedian, sometimes you're a therapist, sometimes you're the chef. You know, you're wearing so many different hats as a
yeah,
parent already. The idea of, okay, now I need to be, in a way, I sort of think you're not ever going to be both a mum and a dad. You might have times where you perhaps bring about a more masculine energy, other times when you
yeah,
bring about a more feminine energy. But what I remember is that, you know, I didn't necessarily have my dad in my life very much, but I had a granddad and I had an uncle. And so for me, they kind of carved out, oh, this is
yeah,
what a dad does, this is what a dad looks like. I think children are quite good at sort of accepting the circumstances and being able to like fill that missing piece in some other way, you know,
yeah.
finding fatherly figures, finding motherly figures in teachers and other sorts of places.
Yeah, I mean, children are more resilient than we give them credit for. And I
100%.
find that if you talk to them as if they're not stupid and they do sort of understand, even if it's very young,
Yes.
and you sit there and you sort of say to them, okay, this is not what we planned. No
Yeah.
one goes into, or very few people go into having children expecting to be on their own with them.
Yeah.
So you can say to the kids, look, I didn't expect this. I didn't plan this. I didn't know this was going to happen. Things are going to have to be a bit different. So how do we make this work? You know, what would you like it to be like? And we need, you know, what rules do you think we need to have? You'd be amazed at how they will contribute. I mean, I even used to do that with punishment. If they did something naughty, I'd sit them down and say, right, this is what I think should be the consequences of this. But if you've got a better idea and it sounds reasonable, feel free to bring it to me and we will review it.
Absolutely. It's amazing when they do that. They just kind of make their own behaviour plan. You go, thank you very much.
Yep, there you go. I mean, I was strict with them. I was very strict with them. And some of their friends.
Do you think? Was it important that they had that strictness and boundaries?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was. I mean, my mum used to say that I was a little too strict on them, because if I said you're grounded for a week and they went, oh, that's not fair, I'd go, okay, 8 days.
Yeah.
Would we like to go on?
Yeah.
But I stuck to it. If they were grounded, I stuck to it. And their friends used to say, oh, if I nag my mum, she just gives in. And I thought, yeah, and you've got no respect for your mum.
Yeah.
But I had to stick to it.
I can imagine that for some people, they maybe try to sort of fill the void, or because of that feeling of guilt, it's like, oh, I'll be a bit softer on them because it's not their fault that their dad isn't around. It's not their fault that their mum doesn't show up when she said she would. So I'll kind of bend the rules a little bit. But I guess that's where the trouble can start to creep in then.
Yeah, I mean, what you've got to remember, no, it's not their fault that dad doesn't show up. It's not their fault they split up. It's not yours either.
That's true. Yeah.
So, you know, don't overcompensate them.
No, because you just
you will have to keep that up. And when they get to 14, 15 and the overcompensation gets to, I want to go on holiday with my mates, where do you stop? So if you start right away, they will grow up being used to that.
Yes.
I mean, it's hard. It's not easy. Sometimes you do sit there and think, oh God, I've been over strict on them.
Yeah.
I've got to do it now. I've said it. If you say you're going to do it, you've got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a client who her mum passed away, so she's being brought up by her dad, and she is a kind of tweenie, so she's not quite in the teenage years fully yet. And one of the things that I've spoken to her dad about is the conversations he will go on to have with her around the fact that her body's going to go through these changes, and at some point she's going to start her periods. And it makes me quite curious, but also sort of really feeling quite respectful of parents who go on a journey like that, where they've maybe got children of the opposite gender to themselves who are going to go through body changes, and sort of having those conversations in a way that it doesn't cause embarrassment, or just doesn't disempower anybody. And I kind of think back, like with my dad, obviously I was not like close with him in that kind of a way, and sometimes I would think, oh, maybe it would be better if I lived with my dad. And then I sort of think back on it now and I go, God, no, like puberty, like saying to my dad I need some sanitary towels, oh God, like I couldn't ever imagine having to talk to him about that sort of stuff. You're quite fortunate in some ways because
I had all girls. Yeah. I was lucky in that way.
But I can imagine, and that's not to say that it's any harder for dads with girls than it is for mums with sons, because they go through a whole host of different changes, and hair sprouting out and other things sprouting up unexpectedly, and all of those sorts of things that happen. And those conversations have to be had, right?
Oh yeah. My girls trained as peer counsellors with the school. Most schools do peer counsellors. They also trained as bereavement peer counsellors for other children who. So my middle daughter, when she was at secondary school, one of the young lads in her year lost his mum.
Right.
She died from cancer, and what we found happened, they put him with Laura as a peer counsellor. What we found happened was Laura sort of took on his dad for the things she talked to her dad about, and he sort of adopted me
Right.
for the mum. And it's still like that now. They still sort of
interesting.
yeah. So I think if you can find another adult that does feel that could take on those questions, and the child, whether it's a granddad or an uncle or even their best mate's dad or someone they can talk to, that's a big help, because it fills a void for them. So I mean, I was lucky in that my girls had their godfather, Danny's godfather, who he's brilliant. You know, he's been absolutely brilliant with them. So they did have a role model. If you can get them a role, you know, involved with someone who can be that role model, doesn't have to be dad.
No.
But they seem to naturally bond with someone.
Yeah.
Even if their best mate's dad or best mate's mum, you know, it's yeah, I think that helps if they can find the parent that's missing, not to be their surrogate parent, but that they can talk to. It's always a good thing. It's always helpful.
I wonder as well, because we talk a lot these days about you know, a bit more sort of, we're a bit more open-minded about gender as a general rule, and it maybe being on a bit of a spectrum. So, you know, I have days when I might look by the way that I dress or do jobs around the house that I would consider like boy jobs, and you know, I'm like, I look like a boy today.
Blue days and pink days.
Yeah, it's a bit like that, to be honest. Yeah, and then other days where I'm hyper feminine, you know. And I think that actually it can be quite useful to be able to sort of acknowledge that actually I can kind of slide up and down this scale. And, you know, I think where I was talking right at the very beginning there about my mum doing I need a man. You remember that song, I Need a Hero? Like, I hate that song so badly because it reminds me of my mum's attitude at that time of like, I can't do it, I need a man. And like over time, you know, that was quite early on. It took time for her to sort of be comfortable with moving out of that stereotypical idea of this is what a woman looks like and this is what a woman does, and kind of being like, oh no, actually I can operate a power tool and it's quite cool. And I think, you know, the more fluidity we can have there, that's got to be a good thing, right? And, you know, likewise, it applies to our boys. Don't just have to be like playing with trucks and all of that sort of stuff, but, you know, they can do painting and drawing and creative stuff, and that's completely okay. And maybe they can, in a way, kind of get in touch with that missing piece from their family by just sort of accessing it through themselves and the they do. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky in that I grew up, I knew how to use a drill, I knew how to use a spanner. My dad had this big idea that if I was going to drive, I had to know how to change a wheel and know if I broke down, if I could get home. So I was lucky in respect that when I found myself on my own with my children, I could do all those things. I could build stuff, I could use power tools, I could fix the car. But I do remember my mum's attitude was very much like yours. And I would be out, one day I was out and I was lugging paving slabs around my garden, and my mum sat there and said, you shouldn't be doing that. That's a man's job. And I just looked at her and I said, okay, Mum, go to my front door, open the door, send the first one through. And she went, the first what? I said, the first one in the queue of men that are out there waiting to do jobs for me. And she just looked at me. I went, okay, I'll do it myself then, shall I? Because you have to adapt. And so if there are any ladies watching that don't know how to use a drill, learn. Because it's really useful.
My real dad. That's what I say now. Is my real dad. That's where I've learned everything I know from.
Yeah, I mean, I used to think my dad was so hard on me, making me do all these things with the car. But oh God, I am so grateful now because I can do these things, and I had to. There was nobody there, you know, in the middle of the night. If a bulb went or a plug needed changing, you can't phone someone up in the middle of the night and go, this has happened, I've got a leak in my sink. You have to do something. So learn or find someone who can teach them.
If there's any single dads that don't know how to do a French plait yet, again,
YouTube it. I mean, Google's brilliant, isn't it? For Google it.
And in some ways, you know, potentially there's a lot more resources out there now than there ever has been. But I guess it's about planning, spending a little bit of time doing your research, you know, doing whatever learning you need to do to be able to make life easier in the long run. Sometimes you have to put in that upfront investment to figure out what it is you need.
And I think, like you said, the gender roles aren't so cut and dried now. You know, you are allowed to be a woman who can use a drill, and you are allowed to be a boy who can do hair and do someone's makeup if they want to. You know, it's not frowned upon like it was. And that goes as well with the same thing we were talking about earlier about the single parent with a child of the opposite sex. I find that especially girls now find it a lot easier to talk about things. I mean, when I was a kid, you didn't talk about it even with your parent, your mother, let alone anyone else, you know. But I think now there is so much out there information that it's not so hard for the girls to say, Dad, I need some sanitary towels. They just expect him to be okay with it. He might feel awkward, but a lot of the time they don't because things have moved on so far. So I think that's a good thing for them now.
100%.
I don't think the girls are so shy about saying it now.
No, I think you're right. I think generally, in a lot of ways, not in all ways, and not necessarily in all of the ways we would want, but society has sort of slightly unfurled. You know, we've opened up a little bit. We're a bit more open-minded and a bit more comfortable with things that, you know, my grandparents would have been uncomfortable about in the past, for example.
Yeah, I mean, my girls used to talk to me about absolutely anything, and some of the conversations were a little shocking to me, but they weren't to them. And some of the conversations that came out around their grandparents' dinner table, just I wanted to crawl underneath, but they thought it was okay. And you think, oh dear. So yeah, and you sort of have to say there are things you don't mention in front of your grandparents still, because they don't come from your generation, you know.
Fair enough.
But my kids could ask me anything, because my attitude was I would rather they asked me about things than asked a friend or looked it up online and got some crazy information that wasn't safe for them. So then I used to have queues of teenage girls at my door because their mum will talk to you about these things and my mum won't.
Right. It sounds like there's a general theme here of communication is like a way to go.
Yeah, communication is the thing, and don't assume that they won't understand.
Yes.
Don't assume that your kids don't get what's going on. because they really, really do. They are amazing little brain things that, like we said, work out from gestures or faces or tones, or they pick it all up. They don't miss a trick.
No, exactly.
Yeah, don't think you have to hide everything from them.
No,
you know.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an article that I found, and I'm not going to share all of it. So it's from redtree.com, and it's called "I'm a Single Mum, but I Don't Play Both Roles." And I was interested to get your take on this. So it says here, playing both roles is an incredible amount of pressure. It's too much pressure, and it doesn't mean parenting by myself. It means doing 2 jobs by myself. And one of those jobs has the sole requirement that you be male, a gender, in case you missed it, that single mothers like me don't possess. Playing both roles is a losing battle because I'm not a father. My children won't have a healthy difference of opinion. My daughter won't see how a man is supposed to treat a woman. My son won't have a strong man to model himself after. I will not coach the baseball team, take them to hockey, stand around a grill drinking beer with a bunch of other men, put them on my shoulders so they can see above a crowd, or encourage them to do a cannonball into the deep end of the swimming pool. That's just not who I am, and I cannot change myself. I wondered what you thought about that. That's not the whole thing, but yeah.
Yeah, you see, standing around with a bunch of blokes drinking beer, that's not being a dad. That's being a bloke.
Yeah, being a lad.
Cannibals. I mean, my attitude is I wasn't being mum and dad. I was being a parent.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's it. I was being a parent. And it didn't matter, I just think that's horrendous, because is she thinking her kids are not going to have any contact with men ever?
Yeah. And I think it comes back to that thing that we talked about earlier about, like, it's making it too cut and dry over, this is a mum, she is a female, this is her role. This is a dad, he is a male, therefore this is his role. And I can't do that and he can't do this. And it's like, actually, it's on a sliding scale. And
absolutely,
we can cross over into different places.
It is so fluid that, because a lot of dad's role as a dad is the same as mum's role as a mum, is to love your kid, to make them socially acceptable human beings. It's not about teaching them to dive bomb in the pool. It's not about, they will learn that without you, with their friends.
This is,
they don't need a dad to show them that will come along.
Exactly.
But mum's role and a dad's role is to be a parent, not to be the one with the drill, not to be the one that cooks and cleans. I find that's quite sad, because I think she's going to miss out on a lot from her kids by giving them that opinion of people. And I think her kids might miss out, and they might suffer a lot of ridicule at school if they grow up saying, no, men do that and women do that. Especially nowadays. So I think that's quite a sad way to look at it. Because mums and dads are people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So above and beyond the roles that we are fulfilling, like, we're just humans doing our best, trying to make other good humans who can go off and do their best.
Yeah, and that is it. You've got to do your best to be social, to encourage them to be socially acceptable human beings. And that's not a gender thing, that's a human thing. Just be a parent. You don't have to take on 2 roles, just be a parent. Just take on one. And do your best. And ask them to do their best.
Yeah, exactly. Julie, was there anything else that you wanted to add or mention by way of advice or experience, or just stuff that came to you over the years that you spent doing the role that you so diligently and successfully did.
I
And
hope I did. Still do, yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, can I just say it doesn't stop at 18?
feeling you might say that.
Yeah, it doesn't stop at 18. Don't fall into that one. I think have fun. You know, try and make things fun. Even crappy things like tidying the bedroom can end up being fun. Make it a competition. Kids love a competition. Yeah, I mean, trying to sort out differences between them. Try not to laugh when you're angry. I mean, my biggest conversation was when my youngest one came in and said, "Mum, Danny called me a slab." And I went, "A slab?" So I called Daddy in and I said, "Did you call your sister a slab?" And I'm trying so hard not to laugh, and she's trying not to laugh. And she went, "No, I called you a pleb, you plank." And then you thought, oh God. But yeah, things can be funny, but you know, there's got to be, and they've got to have time and a place for things. And I think the most important thing is to give them time to themselves. And the absolute most important thing is to have time for yourself. My number one rule was I do not have conversations through the toilet door.
Right, love it.
But I will take a book into the toilet.
Yeah, and that hour that you gave yourself of an evening as well, like super.
Yeah, that makes all the difference, because that's your chance to unwind and just relax and do what you want to do. In that, watch what you want to watch, listen to what you want to listen to. You know, there's only so much Disney you can take.
Yeah, 100%.
So, although I'm quite enjoying going around again with the granddaughter.
It's a different game though when it's the grandchildren.
Oh yeah, you can break the rules with them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So always remember that when you have grandchildren, when all this is over and they've turned into lovely human beings and you've got grandchildren, you can break the rules.
Absolutely.
And give them back.
Yeah.
But no, that is it. Time, and really just don't be too hard on yourself. You know, give yourself a break. You're not an expert. They don't come with instructions. They don't come with a rule book. Just enjoy them. Because they are not kids for long.
Well, this is it. Yeah, the time goes fast.
Yeah,
so
way too fast.
No point spending it feeling guilty about circumstances that you can't change. You're better off the best of the ones that you've got.
Yeah, make good memories.
Yeah.
That's that. Because that's what the kids are going to remember.
Exactly.
They're not going to remember that, oh, Dad didn't turn out. They're going to remember we had great times with Mum, or we had great times with Dad.
Yeah,
they're not going to remember how much you spent. They're going to remember the time you spent.
Yes.
So.
Yep, exactly that. Nice. All right. Well, listen, thank you very, very much for being here with me.
Gemma. It was touch and go.
It was touch and go, but we got there in the end. We got some good content out. Happy with that. All right, it was lovely to see you. Thank you to everyone for tuning in this evening. This was the last of the webinars from Superheroes. If you want to catch up on any of the others, they will be included on our YouTube channel. You can literally just scroll back through the history. If you are in a position to make a donation to Superheroes, there is a link included in the description box to where you're able to go and make a donation of your choice. Every 50 quid enables a child or a family to access support from one of our practitioners for a full session to help and guide them around their mental and emotional well-being. So please give if you can. Thank you very much to the National Lottery for funding this series of webinars. It's been a blast. Our practitioners have done a cracking job sending out some really good content. So thank you to all of them. And I'm sure we will see you all again very soon. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Gemma.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.